It's like this little dirty little bass line.
I don't fucking care. Can we move on to a new segment, please?
Welcome to Just Two Fans, a sports show about sports,
Obviously.
about life,
Because sports are life.
and about just whatever the hell we feel like talking about. So, let's go.
What is up, everybody?
Hi.
I'm Jamie Friedlander. That's Eli
Uh-huh.
Johnson. What is
I don't
that?
know, dude. I'm here. I got a head cold, dude. I'm looping today, man. I'm out of this world today.
That's how it goes sometimes.
It's
I'm
not,
really
it's not like
small
I'm like
and
really
thing.
with it all the time, but like I'm not with it today, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that happens. But I'm going to need you to get with it because there's like
I
some
refuse.
shit that is
I
going down
refuse
in
to
our
be
favorite
with
sport.
anything.
You're such a
I know.
rebel.
I know, dude. I am the Rebel Alliance. That is me. All right? Just okay?
Yep.
Jamie, just okay. I am Luke Skywalker. No. Han Solo.
No, you're not. Yeah. That's
Hell yeah.
that
Hell yeah, I'll be Han
tracks.
Solo all day. Fucking, let's go, dude.
Cool. Obviously, today we are going to talk a lot about Colorado.
Yep.
Because there's, in case you have been living under a rock in the sports world today and yesterday, right back front and center in the news with their jump to the Big 12. So we're going to go into that pretty heavily. Also going to do our Colorado and Utah preview, which is what was scheduled for today. So this, like, just kind of played right
perfect
into our
timing,
hands
truly.
this week.
It's how good we are at this sports stuff.
We're just so awesome at it. It's really incredible.
We're truly an impressive specimen.
So we'll jump into realignment talks. We'll do our Colorado and Utah previews unless shit just gets like totally derailed here, which is possible. It's been known to happen on this show. But before we get into that, there's a couple news stories from the NFL, in particular out of Denver. Again, Colorado just like squarely in
Yeah,
the football
just all over
news
the place,
today
man.
and yesterday, top to bottom. Sean Payton, the new Broncos head coach, did not hold back when talking about the regime that he is
Which
taking
is also
over.
very unsurprising with Sean Payton. That man doesn't really hold back a whole lot ever.
No, not at all. And I personally loved
Yeah.
it. Like, you texted me today and you were like, have you seen this? I was like, I saw that he said something, but I don't know what it was. And then I read it and I was like, yeah, I'm
Why
in.
don't you give the listener a little taste?
Little taste. So this
And
is
viewer.
somewhat of a long quote, but all of it's very important. So bear with me here. But this is what he said. It doesn't happen often where an NFL team or organization gets embarrassed, and that's what happened here. So starts off just
Gangbusters.
super strong. Just, yeah, basically ripping everybody, including his current employer, to pieces. Part of it was their own fault relative to spending so much expletive time trying to win the offseason. I don't know which expletive he used, so I can't
Fucking
use it,
probably.
or I would have. Damn. I don't know.
Ah, they
I
usually
don't know
put
what
damn
they.
in those kind of things.
Yeah, probably
Pretty much.
fucking.
I'm pretty
The
sure. it's
PR,
fucking.
yeah. So much expletive time into trying to win the offseason, the PR, the pomp and circumstance of marching people around and all this stuff. We're not doing any of that. The Jets did that this year. You watch Hard Knocks, all of it. I can see it coming. Remember when Dan Snyder put that dream team together in Washington, obviously. I was at the Giants. I was a young coach. I thought, how are we going to compete with them? Deion Sanders is there now. That team won 8 games or whatever. So listen, just put the work in. Basically, he's saying, we're putting all the fluff, like, this is no fluffs. We're getting to work. We're doing this. The last team sucked, basically. He goes on to rip them even more, and I'm trying to find where the actual quote is. Yep. And this is in relation to Hackett and George Payton, who's still the general manager. This is in relation to their treatment of Russell Wilson. He said, "Oh man, there's so much dirt around that. There's 20 dirty hands from what was allowed, tolerated in the frickin' training rooms, the meetings, the offense. I don't know Hackett. A lot of people had dirt on their hands. It wasn't just Russell. He didn't just flip. He still has it. This BS that he hit a wall, shoot, they couldn't get a play in. They were 29th in the league in pre-snap penalties on both sides of the ball." He's just basically, he is no holding back, ripping the team, which I love this for numerous reasons, because first of all, it shows that he's a no BS guy, which is what that team needs right now, because all last year was BS. And it also shows Russell that he's got his back, which is also extremely important for a guy that
also has really high expectations of him, because basically he was
Right.
also shitting on all the reports coming out about how Russell Wilson just did whatever the fuck he wanted last year.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and he goes into that saying we're not going to, they allowed Russell's training staff into the room and they allowed them to run Russell's practice and stuff, and we're not doing any of that. Yeah, he went on and he's very clearly putting his foot down and saying, "This is my team.
Yeah.
Back the fuck off. But also, I've got your back. Just do what do what you're told." I love everything about this.
Yeah, it's good coaching. I mean, it's and like push comes to shove, if they fuck up again this year and they're bad, he'll take that heat because he's giving the heat out.
Yep.
And he always has. I mean, he took the heat. I mean, for fucking what was that? What was their scandal?
Oh, the
can't remember what it was called. Bounty Gate. He took the heat for that. Like, he's the guy who's gonna take the heat. Hopefully no Bounty Gates here.
No, I don't think that.
I think hopefully he learned his lesson here. But yeah, I mean, it's just really straightforward coaching. Just like, hey, yeah, it's like that Belichick approach of like, you're coming to work,
100%,
and we're gonna be good at
what
we do.
And you're not going to get away with any bullshit.
And we're not going to ride.
This is my
Broncos country. All right.
No,
we're
no
not
riding.
Gonna ride Broncos country. We are going to work. So yeah,
and be good. So I like that. We'll probably talk about the NFL when we got a lot of college football to talk about, but I wanted to bring that up. Other NFL news as training camps began this week. It was the first day of camp for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it did not end well if you are a Cincinnati Bengals fan, because Joe Burrow was carted off the field in his first practice of the preseason.
And I watched the video of it. Luckily, it doesn't appear to be like an ACL tear because he wasn't cutting or anything. He was just running. So I don't know. I'm not going to diagnose anything, but I couldn't imagine it's an ACL tear.
The first thing I thought when I saw it, because what he grabbed when he went down to grab it, he grabbed his calf, and it reminded me instantly of when Kevin Durant snapped his Achilles in the finals a couple years ago. That I was like, oh shit, he just tore his Achilles.
Yeah, that would not be good.
And it sounds like that is not the case from what I heard on the radio tonight. So I think it's more like a calf strain. So it'll keep him out a couple weeks, but it's not like he needs to practice all that much. He's been the quarterback there for a couple years, and he's fine. So I think they dodged a bullet here, but that's not something you want to see for your franchise quarterback on day one of fucking training camp.
Before we move to the next segment here, let's stay with the NFL for just a second. And I just want to say real quick that the current highest paid player in the NFL is an Oregon Duck. Go Ducks.
Damn Skippy.
Damn Skippy and DJ Herbo. Herbie boy.
Yeah, I mean, he earned it. He's not the best quarterback in the. That's what people like. People are like, he didn't earn it. It's like, no, that's not how this works. That's not how the quarterback market works. If you're a franchise guy and your contract is up, you're going to be the next highest paid quarterback in the league. That's how it is. That's just whether you're the best or not has no bearing on what that contract looks like. If you are the guy for the team,
a bitch.
That's it. Yeah, if you're going to get me to feel bad for an NFL owner for having to pay a quarterback, I don't.
No.
So,
Oh, dude, like this running back shit.
oh, that is crazy.
It's crazy, but also it's not crazy.
It's not. It's the most replaceable position in
Yeah,
sports.
it's and like you have a short shelf life. It's you know we talk about how the NFL is a business all the time, and it is a bad business move to put a lot of money into a running back,
100%.
especially one that's over 25. Harsh reality of being the running back is that a young guy can come and replace you, and even if you're the best player in the league and he's a rookie, he'll probably be suitable, good enough to win the games. Like that's just the nature of the position in today's NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there was some stat that was thrown up on ESPN when all this stuff was coming out about how like the last 8 or 10 Super Bowl winners, there was only one that had 1,000-yard rusher on it, and it was the Patriots in 2017 or 18 with LeGarrette Blount, and he was on a 1-year deal. He was not a max contract guy. It was kind of a
I want to be clear here, though. I am 100% for the running backs trying to get their fucking money. If you want to hold out because you think you can earn that kind of money, go for it. Do it. Fuck yeah. I'm just saying, you got to face the harsh reality of like your position is just not as important as a lot of other positions in this game.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I mean, all means, man, get paid, especially if you're a running back. Get paid now because you don't have another contract. I saw something with like the current rookie deals, like Kenneth Walker or whatever isn't going to be a free agent until he's like 27. So he's on his rookie contract till he's like 27, and it really fucks him over, which is unfortunate. But anywho, that's the NFL stuff.
Yeah, I also this wasn't on our thing, but I also want to bring up and don't want to gloss over one of the major stories this week, which was Bronny James going into cardiac arrest during a USC workout earlier in the week. Crazy stuff. And may just end his basketball career before it even started, which is insanity.
Well, you know, hopefully he recovers fully and is good to go.
That is the hope. Sorry, I'm trying to tweet to get more people in here real quick.
I'm not even looking at the numbers, man. We're just here for our people.
Tweeted. All right. Let's get into college football because it's still the best sport in the world, even though like the turmoil is just insane.
Yeah.
I don't even know how else to put that. It's just like, I don't know what to make of all this, right? Like, so again, for anybody who missed it somehow, Colorado is moving back to the Big 12 basically immediately. They're moving in 2024. This is a move that happened seemingly quickly, but it really isn't. So we'll dive into that in a minute. The news all happened fast. And that's why this seems sort of sudden, but this has been over a year in the making.
The official process was faster than it was, just unbelievably fast. I mean, they went from having the final talks to being in the conference next year in 2 days, which is pretty unbelievable.
Right.
So like the people saying it's quick, you're right, it is quick. The talks and the actual move itself it wasn't a spur of the moment move, but once they decided it's go time, it was fucking go time.
Right. And that was on purpose, right? Colorado should get a lot of props in this move because here's kind of the timeline of events, right? So for anybody who doesn't really know the history of how all of this went down with Colorado moving to the Pac-12 and everything, Colorado moved to the Pac-12 in 2011 when the Big 12 just kind of totally blew itself up. And it did it on purpose, right? Because at the time, the three biggest teams in the Big 12, Colorado was number 4, but the three big teams in the Big 12 historically were Texas, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. That was the staples of the conference. Colorado from about the 1988 through the early 2000s was right up in there as well. But Colorado and Nebraska really were starting to get pushed out because there was this Texas coalition. It was basically Texas, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, a bunch of these schools that were trying to get schools like TCU in there and make it basically a Texas conference with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and the Kansas schools, right? So Colorado was feeling pushed out. That on top of the creation of the Longhorn Network, basically Colorado was just like, F you. And Larry Scott at the time was coming in with promises of the Pac-12 network, a big media deal and all this stuff. And so the timing was right for Colorado to move. And it was also right for Nebraska to move to the Big Ten. So that's kind of how it all began, right? Colorado got courted by the Pac-12. They were feeling scorned by the Big 12. And so it was time. Now, we all know how the history of Colorado and the Pac-12 was, and it's not good.
Larry Scott.
Colorado was terrible. We'll get to Larry Scott in a minute.
It's a theme forever.
You can say it for every episode, just like in the background. We should just have like a track.
I'm gonna get like a custom neon sign that just says "fuck Larry Scott."
You absolutely should. Because fuck that guy forever. We all know that Colorado was absolute dog shit in this conference, except for 1 year in 2016. They kind of flash pan had a lot of success that season, right? And so this is kind of football aside. Colorado has felt basically neglected by the Pac-12 since like 2015. They've been upset. They were upset with Larry Scott before even the rest of the conference was, because he wasn't delivering what they promised them when they moved. So Colorado's been upset with the Pac-12 move for the better part of half of their existence in the Pac-12. So yes, Colorado failed in the Pac-12. It did not go well on the field. Basketball saw more success than football for sure, but it still wasn't great on the basketball court.
Really, the only sport they saw success in was cross country,
which they've always had success in. But a lot of that is Larry Scott didn't deliver what he promised, which was a lot of money in a TV rights deal, and he didn't do that. So Colorado's like, I'm not dumping money into athletics because your move from the Big 12 to the Pac-12 was a failure. So while Colorado was an absolute disaster, Colorado fans should hate Larry Scott more than the rest of the conference because it absolutely fucked over that athletic department for years. Just absolutely fucked them. So Colorado's been looking to get out for years now. The Big 12, as soon as Texas and Oklahoma left, the Big 12 was like, hey, remember us? You want to come back?
Commissioner.
And so they've been working on this for over a year now. And that's where we're at. So the addition of Deion Sanders and the resurgence of the football program to the conversation helped, I'm sure, but it is not the driving force.
My thought behind it is that it's really the catalyst here, right? Like it was in the works. They were ready to go. And this could be one of the reasons why Colorado hired Larry Scott.
100%.
Fuck Larry Scott. Fuck Larry Scott. Hired Deion Sanders is that it was like maybe the Big 12 was like, we need to see an investment.
And that may very well be true.
We need to see an investment in these programs. And Colorado went, okay, Deion. And then it was just like, okay, and now you're in. Like,
yep. Yeah, and I watched the Board of Regents meeting today. That was the vote, and it was unanimous. Nobody even balked at it. Finally have a Board of Regents that's on board with athletics, so that also helps. Colorado's just kind of shot itself in the foot for the better part of 2 decades with how they've treated athletics, and now they seem to be flipping the script on that
today. Well, I didn't see a thing. I was looking at their records in football, basketball, just seeing kind of the contributions and stuff athletically they brought to the conference, which was pretty nil. But I saw one thing that I noticed is they have just as many records over 500 as they do under 200 in football. I was just like, that's unbelievably bad.
It's really bad. There's no two ways about it.
Not at 200, under 200. That is 0.1 something or 0.0 something.
There's no two ways about it. Colorado failed the Pac-12 as much as the Pac-12 failed Colorado. I'm wearing a CU hat. I'm not denying that it was an unmitigated disaster.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But there's more to that disaster than Colorado just sucks at football. It was a bad move at a bad time, and Larry Scott, fuck that guy to infinity. Just like, seriously, he is the fucking worst thing that's happened to college football.
I'm glad Colorado came to the Pac-12 because that means I got to see the Ducks when I lived in Colorado.
It's true.
And season tickets.
It's true. We still would have gone back. They were, and we saw a great season in 2016.
It was a lot of fun. I rushed the field for the first time ever because I never got to do
it was. Yeah, I'm not going to get too stuck on what was. It's time to start looking forward with this stuff, but I just kind of wanted to give some context to the history of Colorado and the Pac-12 and what really spurred this move. It's a little – so we talked at length when UCLA and USC left about what the future of the conference and college football would look like as a whole. And I don't want to rehash that necessarily unless people in the chat really want to hear us talk about it. This move doesn't shock me. What is, I guess, surprising based on our previous conversations is that Colorado was the first piece of the puzzle to move. I don't think I expected that.
No, I didn't either. I was fully expecting Oregon and Washington to be the first piece of the first keystone to fall. Whether that was Big 12, Big 10, whatever the fuck, I expected Oregon and Washington to be the first people to bolt after USC and UCLA left. Seeing Colorado be the first domino to fall is a little surprising, although it's not at the same time because
it's the best
makes
fit
too much
of
sense,
any of them,
right? Because they were there not that long ago. They were in that conference.
And they saw a lot of success in the Big 8 and Big 12.
It's a move that makes sense. So I am surprised, and I think that surprise only comes from the fact that Colorado's athletics have been pretty poor, and so you're like you kind of forget about the other things, right? Being football, because especially football realignment has been big, right? And so you kind of forget that there's a lot of other things that go into realignment and conference alignment and stuff like that. And so you kind of forget, there's academics, there's TV markets, there's all this crap. And so it was surprising only because the product on the field has not been there, or the product on the court really hasn't been there. And so seeing it be the first domino to fall where there's programs that have had more success kind of in that area who, you'd think, but maybe they don't have quite the academics. They don't have the, whatever it may be. So I guess I'm surprised, but I'm also not, which is a dumb answer.
No, it's valid because it is of the teams that could move, which is basically everybody but Oregon State and Washington State, because I don't see a home for them. But we'll get into that at some point. This move is the only one that is logical. The rest of them are a bit of a stretch, right? Like Arizona and Arizona State to the Big 12 is possible, and I could see that regionally. But there's no history there. Like Colorado to the Big 12. Like Colorado, if you think about Colorado historically, it's the Big 12. It's not the Pac-12. And it just was a marriage that never...
they were in it since the Big 8.
Never really worked. Colorado's an original Big 8-12 member. It just they should be there. And so it makes sense. It's a good move for them. It provides stability. to an athletic department that has had no stability since it left the Big 12. So all of it makes sense.
That's gonna be a big conference, man. They added like five mid majors last year? 4 mid majors?
Yeah, right now they're at with the departure of Texas and Oklahoma, and then the addition of BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF, they are at 13 now. So the reports today are they are going to add at least one more and possibly 3 more, but it's going to be an even number.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so if you're looking at the one that's possible, the one that keeps coming up all the time when this is happening is Arizona. And brand-wise and the way that the Big 12 is a basketball-heavy conference. It's a decent football conference, but it is a heavyweight basketball conference. Arizona is a perfect fit. And if Arizona goes, it's hard for me to see Arizona State not going. And in that case, you might as well just bring the Four Corner schools and bring Utah with them.
And the thing about Utah, too, is they already have a built-in rival with BYU. Built in, right there, right in front of you.
Yeah.
So that's an easy transition for Utah as well. Like, you got to love. I mean, it's a historic. Yep. It makes historic rivalry, and to put them in the same league is great.
Yeah. So that's it's going to be interesting. Like, people are talking about Oregon and Washington are calling the Big 12. I just don't see that. That just doesn't seem like a fit to me. It feels like if Oregon and Washington are going to leave the Pac-12, it's going to be the Big 10.
Yeah, I mean, and they
but all of that hinges on the Big 10 wanting them.
Yeah, and that's so the weird part is that essentially they've been vetted, right? Both Washington and Oregon have been vetted and approved if the invitation comes out. So really, if what you got to hope for as a Pac-12 fan or an Oregon or Washington fan is that
definitely not as a Pac-12
fan, you're just as sad as the rest of us. You got to hope that the Big Ten goes, we need to start jumping on the super conference stuff before, if the Big 12 makes it to 16, the SEC starts bringing in, Florida State or whoever it is once that ACC contract is up. We need to get ahead of this and get these teams in. The problem is they just signed their new revenue deal, and it doesn't have what the Big 12 has, which is you just have to add the
escalator clause.
So that's where the issue lies. But if we talked about this, but if you're Oregon and Washington and they offer you even a portion of that money, you got to take it because the Pac-12
you have to take
dead
it.
Skis.
Here's the problem. Like, the Big 10 is already at 16 with the addition of USC and UCLA. Yeah. So are they going to go to 20? Are they going to be the first to go to 20? That's the hard part. Like, if I was the Big 10, I'd be like, I don't want to be the first to do that. However, if the Pac-12 does crumble, like if one more school jumps, the Pac-12's done. That's what this does, right? Like, Colorado leaving isn't necessarily the final nail in the coffin, but it's the second to last. Like, that thing's damn near shut and closed forever. And if one more school jumps ship, I don't even care what school it is other than Washington State or Oregon State, but if any other school jumps ship, it's toast. Done for, cannot recover.
Because, your best case scenario is adding 5 mid-majors, and that you just become a mid-major conference at that point, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal, those brands are big enough that you're probably not a mid-major, but you are permanently the 5th Power 5.
Oh yeah, by a wide margin. It'll be the Power 4, the Pac-12, or the Pac whatever it'll be, and then mid-majors. That's what it'll be.
A float in the middle. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. If you're Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Cal, you are making every phone call that you can make to get out.
And it genuinely doesn't matter who. Just a power conference. If the SEC says, hey, you want to come over and play out? Fuck yeah, we do. Like,
and who, like, it's not like Colorado's stuck in the Big 12. Like, let's say this Deion experiment goes as well as it possibly can go, and Colorado is competing for Big 12 championships and maybe the college football playoffs in the next couple years, and Deion sticks around and that brand just blows up. There's nothing to say that they're not going to move to the Big 10 in a couple years. This is just providing stability in a time that they have absolutely none, because the Pac-12 can't get their shit together with a media rights deal.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've been, like, pretty bummed all day about all this. Like, it's you know, everybody kind of talks about this as, like, oh, it's the end of college football as we know it, baby. And, like, it's annoying, but at the same time, like, I am bummed because, like, this is the end of what made me love college football, right? We're watching the downfall of what made me love college football. It's turning into a minor league to the NFL. And I'm not, like, again, the NIL I actually think is it's weirdly going the other direction in the fact that, like, it's making kids stay longer in a lot of cases because they can make more money staying at school than they can going to the NFL, which I think is dope. But, like, watching the Pac-12, for all intents and purposes at this point, fall apart because of ad space, essentially. That's what this boils down to, is advertising. And especially as somebody who fucking hates ads, I am the person who will buy I will buy the upgraded Hulu. I don't give a shit if I'm broke. I will buy the upgraded Hulu because I fucking hate ads so much.
Agreed.
Watching the Pac-12 disintegrate essentially because of ad revenue is really such a big bummer, especially because the Pac-12, I was born and raised a Pac-12 fan, or when Pac-8, Pac-10, it's been a part of my life, so I'm really, really bummed about, like, media markets really playing a factor in my team possibly getting fucked over, because there is a path here where Oregon gets totally fucked.
Yeah. I would say I'm less bummed than you because at least one of my two teams isn't totally fucked. So I'm happy for Colorado because this is a move that makes sense and it's good for them. I would say I was where you are today a year ago or whatever, last May, when USC and UCLA left. That's when I was like, oh, fuck, this whole thing is fucked. All of it's fucked. We're screwed. Like, college football as we know, like, that was when I was like, college football as we know it's done. There's no way that this conference survives without LA. And it turns out that's right. It's just taking a longer time to play out than we thought.
The thing about the UCLA and USC move is it was that, like, oh, fuck, right? But then there was still that glimmer of hope of, like, there are ways they could creatively get around this and, like, still be a Pac-12. And, like, they could get two teams that are on the rise and have good, like, you know, they could go get San Diego State to get in that Southern California market again. They could go get SMU to get a Texas pipeline again. They could, there's things that they could do that you're not going to replace LA, but you can still be a conference and you can still be a competitive conference. Colorado leaving is a sign of, like, oh, this is, no, this media, because, like, there was still the hope of a media deal, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, the fucking CW, great, no, this isn't gonna go well, and then Colorado leaving. This is when I've truly accepted the fact that, like, the Pac-12 is done. There's almost no recovering from this, unless Kliavkov is a fucking genius, which he could be. He could save this somehow, but it's really, really hard to see how you can come back from Colorado leaving. Somebody else is going to leave, like, because there's going to be a panic. Like, the same thing that we're doing, where we're like, fuck. Like, you know, Oregon, you know, is on the phone trying to get somewhere because they don't want to be relegated to a merge with the Mountain West or whatever the fuck is it, you know. They don't want to be in that. And so it's tough to be like, Yeah, this is where the panic starts amongst like regions. I think is like, oh fuck, we have to do something now. So,
oh, I think the writings. I don't see a scenario in which the Pac-12 exists in 2025. I just don't. At least as a Power Five conference as constructed today.
I could see them getting.
I don't see it.
A couple years, but it's going to be a shadow of a conference.
If we're looking at the most likely scenario, and I'm going to pat us on the back hard for this because we called this a year ago, and you can go back. We have receipts. The episodes are there. The Four Corner schools, Colorado was the first to jump. The Arizona schools are going to jump next, and Utah's going to follow, all to the Big 12. And Oregon, Washington, as soon as that happens, as soon as the Pac-12 is officially done for, like that final nails in, then the Big 10 will be like, hey, here's a lifeline. Yeah. They're waiting for Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal to be desperate and take a deal that is
bad,
half of what the rest of the conference gets until the next media rights deal is up. That's what's going to happen here. I just don't see any other scenario. And the unfortunate part of that is Oregon State and Washington State are going to be absolutely left in the dust. I don't see a scenario where those two schools make it into a Power 4 conference then at that point. I don't think that scenario exists. The Big Ten wants nothing to do with them. There's no value added there other than you keep your rivalry with the school that you want from those states.
Yeah.
They're
going to be relegated
it sucks,
to
man.
a group of 5.
It's going to be a Mountain West. They're going to be in the Mountain West. Like, there just may not be a Pac-12. It may just dissolve. Yeah. I just don't know how.
I mean, I could also see.
I feel bad for those
fan
bases.
You know, Stanford going independent, right? Because they have the brand, they have the prestige to be an independent. Cal could also go independent. You know, like those two schools could. You never really know. Cal could not go independent, and they could just merge into the Mountain West or whatever. But yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be. The Big Ten is just biding their time, and especially with the sources coming out being like, "Oh no, they're just going to wait to see how this USC UCLA thing turns out," and it's like that's just going to create.
They just know that there's going to be there's going to be desperation. Oregon, Washington, at least those two schools are going to be crawling to them at some point. Yeah. So they're just biding.
I do want to address a couple things in the chat that I've seen. So Torsten does say that Dan Lanning got a $7 million a year, $20 million buyout length deal. He's locked in. That is awesome. However, if you're in a mid-major, I don't care how good of a coach you are, your recruiting is not going to do as well as you need it to compete for championships like Oregon should be.
The caveat to that is I would say Oregon would not have given that deal if they weren't confident that no matter what, they're going to end up in a good spot. Yeah. And yes, it was probably mostly privately funded by Phil Knight. I get it, right? Yes, that is all very true. However, he also wouldn't have done that if he didn't know that there was a future for the Oregon Ducks in a major conference. And Oregon's brand is way too big at this point. Like, let's just say Arizona's next, right? Arizona's the next domino to fall to the Big 12, and Arizona State follows them because those two make sense. If Oregon's on the phone with the Big 12 and Utah's on the phone with the Big 12 would be absolutely batshit crazy to not take Oregon in that scenario. So Oregon, well, it's not great as an Oregon fan watching all of this happen. I would be much more concerned if I was Utah, Oregon State, Washington State. Because those three are probably the weakest brands remaining in the conference.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Washington State is clearly the weakest brand in the conference, right?
It's not
It's not
even
close. Oregon State is growing, and
they're growing because of football
Yeah.
success. They're not, but like what their value added to a conference
not
is
much.
still unbelievably low.
Not much. So it's I mean they're those two schools are just they're gonna go mid-major.
Right. And all of this is TV market driven, right? So like the Salt Lake market's not great. The Portland market's not great. Seattle is legitimately good, and the Bay Area is legitimately good. Oregon is the one school in that mix that transcends their market because the brand is so strong. And I know I'm saying this as an Oregon fan, and it's going to sound conceited, but from a national standpoint, in all athletics, not just football, Oregon is the strongest brand remaining on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So while they may not have the best market, that brand is undeniable.
Totally.
And so they've positioned themselves very well, and I think Oregon's going to be
It's
fine.
one of those things where with the brand at like Oregon's, you have to consider on some level the reach. Because Portland isn't the greatest market, but Oregon reaches into Washington and Seattle. Oregon reaches into LA. Oregon reaches into Florida. I know that for a fact. Oregon has reach, and you have to think about that.
It's a national brand.
Yeah. It's not obviously it's not going to be
not
a hard
regional
figure, but it's going to be like, no, still we got butts and seats for this.
Well, and while the media market isn't massive, it's these media rights deals and these TV contracts recognize how Oregon games have done nationally for the better part of the last 2 decades. And they've done very well. So I'm not that like, while it sucks, the Pac-12 going away is terrible. As an Oregon fan, I'm not pressing the panic button just yet. The deal's not going to be great. Fortunately for Oregon, they're not fully dependent on TV money because they have such great private donors.
Yeah.
Donor.
No, there's a couple. There's a couple.
That's mostly
one.
Yeah.
But there's also
a couple, Phil and Penny.
Yeah. and Pat. Don't forget about Pat.
Yeah. I want to address another thing that Torsten said on here because it echoes a sentiment that Colorado beat reporters and fans are saying today, which is West Coast at large doesn't care about football. I've accepted this more and more every day. Colorado has always felt like the redheaded stepchild in the Pac-12, largely because they've been so bad, but they also just like it didn't fit, right? Colorado's used to Big 12 football, stadiums packed every week, regardless of how the football team is, right? Like Baylor, for example, back in the day, Colorado walked all over Baylor for their entire existence in the Big 8 and Big 12. Just totally walked all over them. That stadium was always full because it's Texas football. Colorado football fans and beat reporters were like, one of the things I was looking forward to when Colorado made the jump to the Pac-12 was the road trips and visiting all these awesome places on the West Coast. And they were like, at the end of the day, I was extremely underwhelmed because while going to Cali's cool, going to an empty football stadium sucked. And Cal, Stanford, USC even, and UCLA, if their football team wasn't in the top 10, those stadiums were empty as fuck.
Yep.
And so it is, these schools have as much to blame themselves for. Like Oregon, as an Oregon fan, I don't relate to that because Autzon's packed every Saturday.
Here's the thing. This is kind of one of the issues here is that when people talk about the West Coast not caring about football, they're talking about California. Because Oregon's packed. Oregon State, even when they're terrible, packed. Fucking Washington, packed. Washington State, packed always. I hate Washington State fans. Viewer, I hate Washington State fans. I think they're shitty fans. But they pack their stadium.
They're passionate.
Even when their team sucks, which is more often than not.
Utah packed their
Utah
stadium.
packs their stadium.
Cameron can attest to this. Colorado football games were packed at the beginning of the games last year. Were packed. That team sucked balls. It was one of the worst football teams I've ever seen, and that stadium was damn near full at kickoff.
Colorado.
Yeah, that was rough to watch, but it was full the whole time.
Yeah,
I think Colorado was at a bit of a disadvantage, just because when they're bad, the Broncos were good. And so it's harder to fill a packed stadium on Saturday when the better team who's competing is on Sunday. And you've said it multiple times. Like, it's Broncos country. Like, it is Broncos number
100%.
one with a bullet. And so that like Colorado, because like when I was there, like the stadium was rarely packed except for that one season. Right.
Yeah. The crazy thing to me last year was how full it was. And some of that's COVID related, right? Like there's just this itch here to get back to football. So like whatever, but the stadium's gonna be full again a lot then because of Dion, and we can get into that. I don't know, man. It just college football is going to look completely different, and I've come to terms with that. The more and more I think about it, and the more I look at this as objectively as I can, which is almost impossible with two of my teams being front and center in this whole deal. It's just hard for me to see a scenario where Oregon's left behind.
Here's the thing.
I don't see it.
I am very much in the camp of like, this is going to end up fine, right? And it's probably going to end up better for, Colorado. It's probably going to end up better for Oregon at the end of the day. It's just a bummer. It's just a fucking bummer. The Rose Bowl's dead. The Rose Bowl is dead.
Everything, all the tradition and pageantry in college football is largely gone. And it totally sucks. And all the history, like Oregon, Washington's probably going to stay around because I'm sure those teams are tied at the hip with wherever they go. And maybe Oregon and USC will stick around because they'll end up in the Big Ten, but it's not gonna be what we know. And like the biggest bummer, like Colorado, one of the hardest things about Colorado being in and why the fan base fell off so hard is there's no rival. Like there was no rivalry in the Pac-12. Nobody hated Colorado, and Colorado didn't hate anybody. There was mutual respect, and Colorado was largely dog shit, so that played into it. But like,
who's their rival going to be in the Big 12?
It just didn't work. There's history there, at least. Like Colorado and Kansas State used to fucking hate each other. It wasn't necessarily your traditional rivalry, but it was kind of like Oregon, Washington State, right? Like these two fan bases hate each other. They don't call each other rivals, but they don't like each other.
Gotcha.
It's like that. Baylor's up there. You still got Kansas and Oklahoma State. Like there's history with those teams. No history in the Pac-12. And it didn't help that they were bad. Again, Torsten, I want to point out another signifier for the West Coast not caring. Why aren't Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Cisco corporate partners? I've got 3 words to answer that. Larry fucking Scott. Guy sucks ass, can't get some of the biggest companies in the world that are in their backyard to be corporate partners. It's Larry fucking Scott's fault.
I hope he sits on his balls every time he sits down. Every single time, I hope he accidentally sits on his balls. All the dudes here, the ladies you don't know, but it's bad. All the dudes here know how bad it hurts when you accidentally sit on one nut. I hope that happens literally every time Larry Scott sits down.
Well, he's old enough, so they probably get in the way sometimes.
Dude, all the time.
Dangle. They probably do dangle. But
just like, I can't. If you listen to the show, we hate him. I just can't. I don't think we can say enough how bad that fucking guy was at his job.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything quite like it.
It was a pleasure cruise for him, is what it was. He just spent as much money as he
100%.
could.
Spent as much money as he could, took as much money as he could, and he got out.
Yep.
and he fucked over the entire landscape of college football because of it.
Yeah. Just fuck Larry Scott. Oh my God, fuck Larry Scott. I've just been so mad. I've been so mad. Like, I've been bummed out all day.
That's really what
and
sucks,
I'm so
right?
mad at
Like,
Larry Scott still.
And I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I'm totally bummed. I think
I wouldn't be bummed if I was a Colorado fan. Like, I mean, I like Colorado. Obviously, I was a season ticket holder for multiple years. I like Colorado. I enjoy it. But like, if I'm like hardcore Colorado fan, only Colorado fan, I am fucking stoked to be getting out.
Oh, this is a
Not
great
bummed
day to be
at
a
all.
Colorado fan.
I'd be so
No.
opposite of bummed right now. And for the rest of the Pac-12, it's a real bummer that that's the case.
It's a real bummer. And like I saw our third co-host Chris on Twitter today talking about how this is basically the end of the Pac-12, and somebody was like, "Colorado's dog shit. Like, what are you talking about losing?" And Chris had a great response, which was basically, if the worst team in the conference is looking to bolt at the first opportunity to get out, you better understand that the ship's sinking.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know how else to say it. Also, you lost your top media market by a country fucking mile in LA last year. You just lost a top half media market in Denver. So you lost your number 1 and number 5 media market out of 12 in the span of 14 months. 11 market, I guess the Bay Area's, yeah, because LA's
10.
1.
Yeah,
but
so because Bay Area and
they count Cal as Sacramento, which that doesn't make sense.
What?
But yeah, it's 10, but still you lost your number 1 and number 5 media market, 4 or 5 depending on what metrics you look at. Not good.
No, that's a death sentence.
And you're in the middle of negotiations for your rights deal. Like, no, it's not. None of this
Shall
is
we
good
pull one out for
the
our
Pac.
homies in the Pac-12?
Yes,
I've got a little Cherry Coke Zero since I'm not drinking.
I do have a beer. It's a Left Hand Brewing Breezy Does It Passion Fruit Sour Ale.
Ooh, let's get a little ASMR. Let's like beer of the week. Wait, hold on. Toasting the death of the Pac-12. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Fuck Larry Scott. Oh, I miss that
right?
sound. All right, here we go.
Start drinking again.
Oh, that is yummy. Oh man, that's good.
What is it again?
Woo! Left Hand Brewing, so A+ Brewing Company. Breezy Does It Passion Fruit Sour Ale.
Breezy does it.
Tantalizingly tart with tropical passion fruit.
Is that a 5-star?
Ah, that's really good. I don't think it's a 5. Solid 4.5 though.
Sweet.
Really good. A lot of it's because I haven't been drinking a lot, and also just like any beer hitting my lips tastes amazing. But yeah, that's really good.
While you're enjoying that, Torsten brings up a good point about Fox killing Penn State's whiteout because, usually it's Michigan or Ohio State, but because it's the big noon now, those kinds of games, it's just being during the day versus the night. It says like this year, it's likely to be against Iowa, so it just doesn't have like that pomp and circumstance, and then the timing. Just TV networks getting in the way of the sport.
Okay, so elaborate a little more, Torsten. So they pre-schedule the whiteout before the season? It's not like we have a night game coming up, it's going to be this week? I'm assuming that's the answer because, okay, so basically you're saying since the premier slot in the Big Ten is Big Noon kickoff instead of a night game, it has killed the whiteout because the whiteouts happen at night, and now it has to be one of the non-premier games on the schedule. Am I getting all of that right?
Yeah, that's what I think he was getting at, because I pulled up an article and that was pretty much the gist of the article.
Yeah,
was
I
that-
mean, these media, like, it really sucks that these TV deals are completely running college football. I
taking a lot of the
wish
heart out of it. Like I said, it's turning into a
it's
minor
taking
league.
all. It is, and I don't even think it's that, because there's no affiliation with the, but it is so corporate.
That's what I mean. It's like
And-
it's turned into the business of college football, which one of the beauties of college football was it wasn't about the business. It was about the passion.
Well, and one of the things that really sucks, and Mark Emmert deserves a lot of egg on his face with all of this too, is like, it's great that all these conferences could come up with their own plans and their own media rights deals and everything, but the lack of any centralized anything governance from the NCAA when it comes to this stuff has really caused this implosion. Yeah. There had to be some sort of oversight or something saying, here's the college football TV deal that is distributed to these conferences. Now, you could say the SEC gets a bigger piece of this pie, or some of the piece, like the number of premier games that you get televised because of the success of your program determines your piece of the pie. I could get that, but like just leaving it all up to the markets is always going to favor the East Coast teams, not the West. Always.
Right, I'm gonna do my toast to the end of the Pac-12.
It's Colorado, Torsten.
I don't drink anymore, and so I've got cherry Coke, zero sugar, 0 cals. Because here's the thing, I'm trying to go low sugar, but even if I wasn't trying to go low sugar, Diet Coke of any kind, Coke Zero, Diet Coke is S tier. Everyone's like, I like regular Coke. Fuck that. It's gross. It's sticky. It makes my mouth feel weird. Diet is always the way to go. I will take my aspartame. Thank you. But here's a little ASMR on soda for you guys.
Oh, this one's making me red.
Nice. Solid ASMR
nice
for the soda, dude. Starting off strong. So pouring out for the homies. I'm not going to actually pour it out because that'd be gross. But pouring out for the homie in the Pac-12, man.
To elaborate on Eli's point, McDonald's Diet Coke is far and above the best Diet Coke.
McDonald's Diet Coke is the best hangover remedy of all time.
You guys know why McDonald's Coke tastes so good?
They
and Sprite,
carbonate
for that
it more,
matter.
and they add more syrup.
And McDonald's made a deal with Coke like a long ass time ago. It's the only Coke that still comes in like an aluminum barrel, basically.
Oh. So
like the syrup is actually higher quality because it's stored in an aluminum barrel. Everywhere else that you get it is it's either a bag or a plastic barrel.
Wow. Didn't know that. I knew they did like they like patented the carbonation rate of McDonald's Coke. And so it's like it's like they had scientists figure out like the optimal carbonation to make it taste the best, but McDonald's Diet Coke is one of my favorite things.
There you go, listener. You learn something
new every day on the Just Two Fans show.
If we could get McDonald's Diet Coke with Chick-fil-A ice,
oh my god,
it'd be unbeatable.
I can only be so turned on, Cameron.
For everyone listening, Cameron is our super producer, and he is now going to chime in
from time to time. He's gonna be trying to monitor chat more, and just chime in and bring your guys' interaction to us. So Jamie and I are kind of dumb, and Jamie and I can't do two things at once a lot of times. And so what we do is we're just going to focus on talking, and Cameron's going to try. We'll check the chat every now and then, but Cameron's going to try to keep us abreast of things that we're missing as super producer Cameron. So that's what's happening. In case you're wondering, like, why is he here? Sam, sorry, Helmet 556. You can't gain weight. It's Coke Zero, homie. 0 calories. That's free money.
Big facts.
That's free money.
Big facts.
Can't gain 5 pounds. Free money. That's why it's the GOAT. It's the GOAT.
What he didn't say is he orders 3 Big Mac meals with that
You know,
Diet Coke.
that'll do it. That'll do it. That'll do it. I had a Wendy's burger for the first time in like 4 years the other day. I was like, I had like a bunch of meetings in the morning, like a bunch of meetings. I was like busy all day long, and I hadn't eaten at all until like 3:30, and I was just like, you know what? I've got the extra calories today in my diet. Fuck it. I'm going for a fast food. Got a Wendy's burger. Still delicious. Just absolutely delicious. It was amazing. I just wanted to say that.
Awesome.
I still lost weight after eating a Wendy's burger because I had no other calories. It's called crash dieting, kids. Do it. It works.
Super healthy for you.
Super good for your bodily functions.
I want to bring up a couple more things on this before we. So we've talked about all of this. We went through our like realignment scenarios last year, so I'm not going to go fully into it. Do you see? We think the most likely scenario is the Pac-12 dissolves, right? I think we've come to that conclusion.
Yes.
Do you think, what is the likelihood, like if you're going to give it like a 0 to 10, what are the chances that the Pac-12 remains as a conference with the teams remaining?
15%.
Yeah, I was going to say 20. So
Yeah.
I'm right there
I think
I don't see it.
there is still like, I mean, the thing is, if the Big Ten isn't calling, Oregon and Washington are stick and put, right? And you can get by.
If the Big 12
with
calls, if the Big 12 or the Big 10 calls, those two schools are gone.
Oh, absolutely. But if
Gone.
those if those conferences don't call, there is a chance that you get the Pac-8 again or whatever the hell, or they go get San Diego State, they go get SMU, they get Boise State or something like that.
That is a nightmare
That
scenario.
is literally
for those.
worst case. But so that's why I'm at 10
that is a
or
worst case
15%
scenario.
that's going to happen because, like you said, I think the brand of Oregon and Washington's brand, which is still also pretty big, outweigh a lot of the downsides that other conferences would have taking them on. So I'm at about 10-15% here.
Yeah, I just don't see it. All right. I don't want to gloss over did you see Brutus Buckeyes Instagram post the other
it's
day?
giving me false hope, that fucker.
That's what started all of this nonsense. It was a picture of Brutus and the Duck in Autzen Stadium, arms around each other, and what was the caption? It said like big things coming, but it was big, and big was all capitalized.
Big, like B1G, like the logo.
I don't think it was the number 1.
100%
I don't think
was. It
was it
100% was.
I'm gonna pull it up.
And so, but they were in Autzen, so it probably means they're going to be doing a makeup game for the home and home that Ohio State canceled on. That's probably what this means. However, in my head, I would love to think that the Pac-12 or that Oregon and Ohio State are announcing Oregon's departure to the Big Ten through their fucking mascots' Instagram pages.
It was not the number 1.
Was it on the Ducks then? I did see it.
It's all capitalized. It says big things coming with the eye emoji.
Well, I was 100% wrong.
Crazy. just set, and it's probably just them trolling Twitter because they knew it would just cause an absolute
they posted
shitstorm.
it like the day before the Colorado news.
And they posted it the day before Big Ten Media Days. So like the timing was like, oh shit, we're about to get an absolute bombshell news at Big Ten Media Days, and no, didn't get any of that.
Thorsten brings up he says, a fun question. Where are the remaining 9 schools going to find another game next year? Colorado gone. Each Pac-12 team has 8 conference games and 3 non, which leaves them 1 game short.
Oh, they go the SEC model.
Well, but it's going to be hard to find 3 non-conference games. I think in all likelihood, it's San Diego State
Oh, they just add San Diego State
joining the Pac-12. Like, if the Pac-12 is still around, the answer is whoever is in the Pac-12 with them is who replaces
Yeah, or
it.
they could go with the SEC model and just schedule a non-conference. One more non-conference. There's always an FCS team who'll do it.
Right,
Like-
right. They all just add an FCS school. Very
or like a lower, like a group of 5 who's desperate.
Unfortunately for those schools, they are not Alabama and LSU and Florida and
it would be
Georgia,
frowned upon.
where they can get away with doing
Yeah,
that.
no,
shit.
it'd be frowned. They'd be like, "Oh, the schedule was so easy." Yeah,
There are very few scenarios left where the Pac-12 remaining the Pac-12 or the Pac-8 or whatever is good for those schools.
Yeah.
It's just those scenarios are becoming fewer and farther between. I just don't see it.
totally.
So that's realignment. What else?
Sometimes.
It sucks. Now, that being said, 4 super conferences is kind of exciting if you can get the teams and the matchups right. So I'm not saying this is like doomsday for college football and we're all doomed and the sport's done for. It's not going to look the same. The Rose Bowl's toast.
Yeah, it's gonna be different. It could be really fun and cool, but it's gonna be. It's not gonna be what made us fall in love with the game.
It's an absolute new era of the sport that is going to be virtually unrecognizable.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. Should we get into the Colorado and Utah
Let's
recap
do
or a
it.
preview? These are going to be a little different than the previews we've done previously. Colorado, basically, there's no point in even talking about last year because that entire fucking team is gone.
Yeah.
So, and it was just bad, right? Like the whole summary of 2022 Colorado football was as bad as it gets, and then Cal game.
The Cal game. Yeah, I mean, like Jamie and I were talking about this episode, kind of like, how are we going to do this? Because Colorado is a whole different team, and we don't want to go through every single transfer, every single recruit, and like try to figure out who's like. And so we decided we're just going to go through the position groups and tell you how we feel about them at this point. And then we got to Utah, and we're kind of like, okay, this is the opposite problem of Colorado, where they pretty much have the exact same team coming back on the field. Deuces, Torsten, thanks for stopping by, dude.
He's out. I know it's late
Yes,
for you. Thanks for
coming
hanging
by.
out.
But like Utah's kind of in the same boat, but the opposite of like, there's really not a lot of transfers or freshmen who are going to be contributing. It's basically the same team. So it's like we're just going to do the same thing for both schools. It's just kind of go over the position groups, review them, how we feel about them, highs, lows, stuff like that.
Yep. So I'll do a brief recap of 2022 for Colorado. I just did it. Bad. That's the
Solid.
review. It was bad. Carl Durrell was fired on October 2nd after starting 0-5. That's pretty much the end of that. Then obviously it's prime time in Boulder. We're not going to go a whole lot into Dion because we've already had our Dion episode and everybody's had the Dion show for 5 months now. So we don't need to go into Dion. However, we are going to talk a little bit about the coaching staff that he's bringing in because that is a key part in this preview. So Sean Lewis is the new offensive coordinator. The good thing here for Colorado is he was the head coach at Kent State since 2018. So they got a head coach to come over and be the offensive coordinator of their team. That brings in a whole lot of experience at high coaching level. Now, Kent State's not Alabama or anything, but he's a head coach at a relatively major school. That's a good hire.
I like this hire a
He
lot,
brings-
especially because he runs like a really up-tempo offense, and one way that you can quickly improve a team is by using tempo. You can cover talent gap you can do a lot of things with tempo that you wouldn't be able to do. Like for rebuilding, you can do a lot of things with tempo that you wouldn't be able to do with like a power or a closer to pro style. Like you wouldn't, like Alabama, you wouldn't be able to, like, if Alabama wasn't, if you're running that offense, this would not be as quick of a rebuild necessarily as you can with speed and high tempo.
Right. And one of the key examples of this is Oregon in 2007, right? Kind of took college football world by storm with Chip Kelly's offense in 2007. Now, it's a little different because teams have grown to adapt to the speed. Back then, it was a total shock to the system, and nobody knew what the hell was going on. So it's a little different, but you still see it, that especially, and we'll get into the O-line here, but especially when you have an O-line that is mid to poor, you can cover that up a little to an extent with speed and tempo and getting outside and avoiding the rush with tempo and speed. So it's a very good hire. It was probably a strategic move, but the fact that you're able to get a coach with head coaching experience, and not a little head coaching experience, he was there for 4 years
and
as the head coach,
success.
5 years head coach at Kent State, and had some pretty good success at a program that's not easy to have success at. I think it's a really good hire. On the defensive side of the ball, they got Charles Kelly from Alabama. He was the associate defensive coordinator and safeties coach at Alabama since 2019. So a program that doesn't have a lot of continuity at the coaching position. He was there for a while, and obviously the team since 2019 at Alabama have seen just a little bit of success, especially in the secondary. So another slam dunk hire, both A+ in my book.
Yeah, it's weird because I've heard like conflicting things on what he's gonna do on the defense. Whether it's gonna be like is it gonna be a 3-3? Is it gonna be a 4-2? Like, I've heard a couple different things on what he's doing, so I'm gonna be excited to see where it goes.
I mean, the good thing about that is it sounds like he's adaptable, which is, we'll get into that when we get to the keys of the season. But this coaching staff is going to have to be able to make changes on the fly based on how the team's performing. And so it sounds like he's able to do that. If we're looking at last year, like the rankings of how this team did, like we always did, how the past, like those stats make no difference. This team only has 10 returning scholarship players from 2022, and only one of those is a starter.
Yep.
Was a
for
starter.
For those of you who don't know, there are 83 scholarship players on each team.
Yeah. So the attrition is unlike anything we've ever seen. And as Dion has very publicly stated, it was a 1-11 dog shit team. Like, why is everybody shocked that we cleaned house? They were terrible. And of the whatever 71 players that left, 50 of them, only 50 of them, so 50 of the 71 players that left as transfers, which means 21 players left and are no longer in football at all.
It's wild. They were a bad team.
So
man. They were a bad team.
They were really bad. The returning players of note, there are a couple.
But they were sure happy that Colorado State was there.
Yeah. The state of Colorado and college football was real bad, except for Air Force was pretty good. The two returning players that are of any note are Trevor Woods, the safety. He's likely to be a starter again, and he was actually legit. He was a good safety in a bad secondary. So anytime that he got lit up, it really wasn't his fault. He's a legit player. Would he start on a team like Oregon that's super deep in the secondary? Probably not, but he is a Power 5 level talent. The other notable player returning is Van Wells. He's a center. He was a 3-star prospect coming out of high school. But all of the reports coming out of camps are that this guy is one of the most coachable players that was on that team. And he goes the extra mile to learn and get better. So, and he was actually playing decent football by the end of the year. So not the best center. Again, it's not like these guys are groundbreaking because this team was bad, but he is a notable returner and he's probably going to start. Key departing players. There were good players, especially at the skill positions on offense. You had Montana Lamonius Craig, who we already covered with Arizona. Really good receiver. He's going to be very good at Arizona. Same with Jordan Tyson, wide receiver at Arizona State now. Same story. Those are two budding stars at receiver on a very bad team, but they were shining spots on a bad team. And then Jake Wiley, the tackle who went to UCLA, we covered him on our UCLA preview. So there were some departures on offense that are going to hurt, just not a lot because the team was bad.
And full disclosure, we're not going to go through and be like, this unit is improved, because they're all improved. All of them.
The whole team's improved.
Every position skill. Well, that's not true, actually. Not every position group has improved, but the ones we're more likely going to talk about the ones that haven't than the ones that have, because if we don't explicitly mention it, they have markedly improved.
Yes. The only two defensive players leaving that are of note is Jalen Sammy, D lineman to Michigan State. Solid D lineman, good run stopper. Nothing crazy, but he's of note. And then Nico Reed was the other secondary position player that was good alongside Trevor Woods, and he transferred to Oregon. Oregon fans don't expect another Christian Gonzalez out of him because he's not quite that caliber, but he's a solid rotational guy.
In the Oregon preview.
Yes. Yep. So obviously positions of need is everything. So we're going to go into this and we'll give you like how the recruiting recap and everything, but really we're going to go position group by position group, give you a breakdown on what we think, and then we'll give you our 2023 kind of season outlook and what to expect from this unit. If we're looking at the recruiting, obviously Dion came in and made a huge splash, especially on the transfer side. It's the number one transfer class in the country, which is not a surprise with the number of players they brought in.
They had to get as many people as they could,
and the caliber of the talent they brought in.
The
gap
recruiting
is
class
massive.
itself is pretty mid, but I really feel like they weren't trying for prep recruits because they needed to win now, and so they went with guys who had experience. That's what my thought is. I think Colorado is not going to have trouble recruiting from here on out, but I think this year they made a conscious effort. Obviously, they got Kamani McLean, who's a baller, but and was he the number one player in the class? Just the number one cornerback. I can't remember, but he's obviously great.
Number one corner.
But I think they made a conscious effort to focus on the transfer portal rather than prep recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, Dion was very upfront about that. He said 40% of this roster is going to be transfers, 20% is going to be high school recruits, and 20% is going to be returning players. And I think it's way less than 20% returning. So it's even higher on the transfer percentage than what he said. But he was very clear that they were going to build this roster from the transfer portal. Now, you said mid. It's still the high school recruiting class was 29th overall and 5th in the Pac-12, which is the best Colorado's had since they joined the Pac-12.
Again,
so mid is still
Jamie, we talked about
great.
this. We're not going to talk about the improvement unless it was a
right, but mid for this is great for Colorado, and he did it in a very, very short time span.
Yep.
So it's the roster overhaul is unbelievably impressive. Yes. We're just we'll get into what to expect because of that.
Let's do it.
So let's go position group by position group. We're going to start with the offense, and we're going to start in the trenches with the O-line.
So we are starting out with what is still Colorado's biggest position of need. And to me, this is like the epitome of Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Obviously, they've made good strides here. I think the line is probably the second smallest step forward, but it is the biggest position of need. The smallest step forward is tight end, but we'll get to them in a minute. But the O-line is the biggest position of need, and they have made some improvements on this offensive line, but it's really not that big of a step forward. A lot of the talent they brought in are like kind of career backups, or they played in like really low levels of the game, and like still graded out fairly mediocre at those lower levels. They returned Christian Lichtinen. Is that right? Lichtinen?
Yep.
And Wells, who you'd talked about, the center Wells. Christian Lichtinen is a huge dude. He's like 6'7", like 340.
He's massive.
Giant.
He is
However,
massive.
he shows every bit of his side in his speed, and he really struggles with outside speed rushers, which there are a lot of very good ones in the pack this year. So I'm a little concerned that he's not going to be able to keep up, especially in a very up-tempo offense. I think he's going to struggle just purely on his size. I think that's going to be a really hard struggle for him because, like, I don't care who you are. If you're 6'7", 340, you can be the best shape of your life. It's still going to be struggle sprinting down the field all the time. But when you go over to, like, the other returner, Wells, last year he was pretty undersized and he got blown up a lot, especially at the beginning of the season. He did say he improved over the season, which is good. And maybe he put on some mass this offseason. I'm not really sure, but
the whole team has. So I saw like some pictures recently, and obviously they were showing Travis Hunter a lot, but the entire team is just way bigger. It was like a Mario Cristobal Oregon type transformation.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, so he's probably going to get better because he got, like, he was still pretty big, but I mean, he wasn't big. He was like 280 or something like that, which for a D1 collegiate offensive lineman,
I think he's listed at 300.
Very, 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 very small, and it showed because he got blown up all the time. But like overall, I just look at this line, and like last year they were atrocious. One of the worst offensive line units I've seen. They were just terrible. And so when you look at having two guys still starting from that horrible offensive line, that and only having 13 offensive linemen on their roster on their scholarships, which for the listener / viewer, 13 is generally considered too few to have a football on your football team. Like you can't run a collegiate football team with only 13 scholarship linemen. So it's really not a great sign, and it's a pretty bad start in my opinion for this preview. I think they're going to be improved, like we talked about, but they're still going to be a bottom tier in the Pac-12 offensive line.
There's no doubt about that. And offensive line's the hardest thing to get right quickly. Like you said, Rome's not built in a day. So, all of the offseason's been built around Colorado getting all this talent. And yes, we'll get to the skill positions here. They have brought in a lot of talent. It's just not in the offensive line trenches.
Yes.
Which is, again, it's not a surprise.
Yeah, no,
right?
that's where
it's going to take a while.
So when you get a guy like Dion, and like I like Dion a lot, but he is not a guy who has ever focused on trenches in his life, and it's pretty clear that he wasn't doing that again. Skill players tend to gravitate towards only recruiting skill players. That's why I liked Mario Cristobal's recruiting, because he loved the big hefty boys, because he was a big hefty boy.
Well, the other thing about it, it's really hard to get good transfer O linemen, because if they're good and they're producing where they are, it's because they're in a solid system with a solid line with them, and they're not looking to leave.
Very true.
So it's maybe not even that he wasn't focusing on it. It's just a really hard position to turn over quickly.
That's fair.
So that's,
they're still going to be real.
This was always going to be the struggle. This is where the speed, up tempo, and offensive mind of Sean Lewis is going to come into play here, because he knows what this O line is. He's going to have to scheme around it. He's going to have to coach his ass off. But there's hope that it won't be quite as detrimental as it could be, because they can use that tempo to kind of mitigate the downfall of the line. On to quarterbacks. Obviously, this position's had a lot of attention to it, because Shedeur Sanders is taking over the quarterback slot. obviously going to get a lot of attention with his last name, and just he's the coach's son. He's a Sanders, and that's how it is. Supreme talent hasn't shown a lot in his time at JSU, and as you mentioned in our prep yesterday, most of his passes, 70%, I believe, were 8 yards or less, so there wasn't a lot of downfield passing. The good thing is, in the Sean Lewis system, there's not a whole ton of downfield passing again, so he's going to kind of be in his comfort zone. However, he is going to, at this level, he's going to have to show that arm strength, which he has. I know he has it because all the reports are he rips the ball. It's just, can he be accurate with it and limit the mistakes when he's going downfield?
Yeah, like I'm not really as high on Shedeur Sanders as a lot of people are. I think this is going to be a pretty rough transition for him. The speed between playing whatever Southern Georgia Tech or whatever he was playing versus playing an Oregon team is going to be essentially night and day, right? And one thing that really kind of that's really concerning to me with him, like you said, he's supremely talented. He's got the mechanics. He's got speed. But one thing he doesn't do, and he hasn't shown, is using that speed. When he was at JSU, they rarely ran any quarterback runs. Very, very rarely, because the article I read was, they were like, oh, because Dion wants his son in the NFL, so he's going to keep him healthy. So you're not really going to see, because Lewis's offense does run some power QB runs, some stuff like that. So you may not see it. He seems a little like a square peg trying to fit in a round hole with Lewis's offense. I could be wrong here, right? Because like Shedeur doesn't run a triple read option, spread. That's not what they ran at JSU necessarily. And so
he does run, though, because he ran plenty. I mean, it's not like he ran you're right, they don't run a triple option by any means, but he has plus legs. Like, it's not like he's standing in the pocket like Peyton Manning and not able to
like I said,
run.
He's got speed, but he just rarely uses it. They don't use it that much. And whether that's designed or something like that, I don't know. I like, especially with an offensive line that's gonna struggle and going to be tough, he's gonna have to make very quick decisions under a lot of pressure at a much higher level than he did last year. It just concerns me, like, to look at it and be like, that's gonna be a rough step. And Lewis can game plan around that for sure, like quick one reads until he can get comfortable or until the offensive line can come together and play better. I just think it's going to be a rough transition in the beginning.
This was the high school recruiting analysis for Shedeur Sanders. Highly productive and a winner with a pair of state championships to his name, and in Texas, if you win a state championship, that's a big deal. Athletic frame, moves well and can extend plays, does a nice job making that initial pass rusher miss, doesn't panic, and shows poise and calmness in the pocket. Has dual threat ability and can pick up big chunk yards with his legs, but doesn't take off and run as much as you would expect.
I mean, he was a 4-star coming out of high school. Like, he's not a bad quarterback. I'm not saying that. I think he's just he's gonna need time to adjust. It's gonna be like this. What the guy at Washington State? I'm totally blanking his name right now. Cam Ward, right? Like, he's a talented quarterback, has all the skill. I mean, he won a championship with Incarnate Word, I think, or they were close. They were in the play. He was like they're unbelievable that year. It's just a totally different game at this level, right? And like, obviously Shedeur wasn't in FCS, right? Or was it? Is JSU FCS?
It was FCS.
So it's just a different game. Like, everybody's like, outside of JSU, everybody in the FBS, the backups are better than most of the FCS starters, right? So you're going against a whole other level of competition, and there's gonna be adjustment there. You can't expect this kid to go light it out right away.
I don't think you can expect it. I just wouldn't be surprised because he has the talent.
I'd be pretty surprised if he does it
it
in the beginning of the season. I'd be pretty surprised. That's a.
I mean, coming out the gates game one, yeah, maybe.
I think it's take
I don't
know,
man.
Because he's going to be under pressure.
We'll see
a lot, and that's going to be tough.
We'll see. We will see. He was under pressure a lot at JSU too. I don't know how many JSU games you watched, but that again, dude was getting out of the pocket immediately.
He's throwing to a 5-star Travis Hunter who's playing against a 0-star guy at cornerback. Right?
I'm not disagreeing with you. There's a transition. It's going to be rough. I just if we're looking at if you're looking at guys that went from FCS to the FBS and struggled, like Dakota Prokop comes to mind. But that's not a guy that coming out of high school was a 4-star recruit. He kind of blossomed into a good FCS quarterback and then tried it at the FBS level and failed miserably. I don't think this is a case like that. He's got more talent than those guys. And if his dad wasn't the head coach at Jackson State, he would have been at Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, any of those, because that's the talent he was coming out of high school.
I guess we'll see.
So I don't think this team's going to come out and light it up anywhere to start the season, and he is a part of that puzzle. But I'm not sure the adjustment's going to be quite as hard as you think it is for him, unless that O-line is just so bad and they can't scheme around it that he's running for his life.
That's the defining factor here, right? Like, if he just had to deal with the speed of D1 football, this would be a totally different story, right? If he was behind Oregon's offensive line, totally different story. If he's behind Utah's offensive line, totally different story. But the fact is, he's gonna get these massive 300-pound guys running a 4.2 40 in his face,
and he's never had that.
He's never had
100%.
That. So I think it's just gonna be rough.
100%. Agreed. On to the running backs. This is a solid group.
This is actually they're a very solid group. They're not gonna light people up like the top end backs, but I think they're just solidly like that second tier of running back rooms in the Pac-12. It's McCaskill and Edwards. They're really solid runners, and they complement each other well, which is something I do really like out of this room. Because McCaskill is kind of like this big burly dude who can get him on short downs, which is he can be their workhorse, which is something they're going to need with a bad offensive line. Running is going to be tough.
Yeah,
they need somebody who's a tough runner. Whereas Edwards is somebody who can be that small guy who can just like scat out of the backfield and be 20 yards down the field before you know it, which is another thing they need. And I think they complement each other very well.
Agreed. And you can also throw in Cavassier Smoke in there, transfer from
dope name, dude,
from Kentucky, because he's kind of that third down. He's got the speed, but he'll also lower his shoulder and run you over, kind of guy.
I don't think he's going to be taking a lot of snaps, but I think in my opinion, from what I've seen, he is pretty clearly the third option here. But he's good. Like again, it's a solid.
He's a good third
solid
option.
Running back room.
It's a good room. It's a good room.
And so, like I said, tier 2 probably in the Pac-12, but I just really like the synergy, to use corporate speak. I really like the synergy between McCaskill and Edwards. I think they're going to be a really dangerous combo.
You're going to see throughout this review that the flashiness and pomp and circumstance that Dion brings attracts the skill position guys. Yeah. And the high-profile type guys. Now, again, I don't think that's necessarily fair to slight him for the O-line because, again, that is the hardest position to recruit and get transfers in. So I'm not holding that against this coaching staff because, like you said, Rome wasn't built in a day. Let's move on to the wide receiver room, which is very young and very fast.
Yes. Then they have a lot of really raw talent. I've used that term a lot in these previews. There's a lot of raw guys out there. Like their wide receiver room, while you said they're very fast, they're pretty tall, but they're really raw and they're young. And like the Xavier Weaver he's a USF guy. He's been playing a couple of years, and he's slotted to be kind of the number one guy. He was pretty good at USF, and I think he's going to be pretty good on this level as well. He also is joined by his fellow USF transfer, the guy Horn. Is his last name? I need to start putting in
Jimmy Horn.
I need to start putting in full names. I just like put in last names.
Full names.
And
Jimmy
apparently,
Horn Jr.
like from everything I've read out of this Colorado camp, is that he has solidified his slot receiver role, and he was a good slot receiver at USF. USF had a pretty prolific offense last year, and these two were the leaders on that. So,
Jimmy Horn Jr. is the one name that's not Travis Hunter or Shadur Sanders that has been mentioned by this coaching staff over and over and over and over again. And if you're not familiar with how Dion has done numbers, you don't get a single digit number until you earn it. Like you can't just say I'm number one. You have to earn a single digit number, and you do that through your work ethic, whatever, to get you that number. He was the first play. He got a single digit number before Shadur did.
wow.
So he was the first guy on the team to earn that from Dion. So he's made an impression since the moment he walked on campus.
I mean, he's a solid guy at USF, and like you said, everything I've heard coming out of their camps and stuff is that he's the guy at slot. I also I like Travis Hunter a lot at wide receiver. I think he's a great wide receiver. I just don't see him being like a consistent starter there because he's going to be needed on defense more, and it's very rare to have a two-way player in college. I think by the end of the season, once they have one of these other young guys kind of step up into the role, I think you'll see Travis Hunter really just step into that defensive role.
I am very leery of Travis Hunter being a two-way guy. He is way too talented to be putting that much strain on him. I don't like that at all. So if we see Travis Hunter truly splitting time between offense and defense, I will be concerned as a Colorado fan.
It's tough because like the depth of this room on paper, not great. They've got some good players who came in, but really after the starting 3 or 4, you're kind of like, I don't see a whole lot out of it. They're young, like we said, they're young and fast, but like you just don't see a whole lot, and so I think especially at the beginning of the season you'll see him two-way kind of more than you'd like to, but I think eventually he'll take that. Once somebody starts to develop from that younger crew, you'll see him take less and less snaps at wide receiver.
That's the hope for me, because I don't want that. All right, that's pretty much sums it up for me. Also, young room, but there's a lot of talent there and a lot of speed. They clearly were going after speed, which fits with the offense. They've gone after. Other than the O-line, which we've talked about the struggles there, but they went after, not only did they go after good guys, they went after good guys that fit the scheme. And so the recipe for a good turnaround is there. It's just a matter of how big of a turnaround they can have. And we'll get to that. Tight end room, we're not going to go into this very much because it's virtually unused in Sean Lewis's system. And there's just not a whole lot going on in that room.
It's one of the returning players from Colorado, this Passarello kid. And basically he's just going to be used as a blocker if he plays at all. And he wasn't very good last year, so it doesn't really matter.
Yep. That and so we can basically move on. On to the defense. The D-line, arguably one of the most improved units, especially on the edge on this team.
Yeah. So, like, as I've watched Colorado over the years, D-line really, especially at the interior position, really hasn't been much of an issue. They've never been weak at the D-line. They've had some NFL talent, even in their horrible,
especially on the interior.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, interior line, they've had some really good talent. Last year, so like their interior defensive linemen have always been pretty good, and not really the problem. Their exterior and their edge rushers have been pretty bad. Like they over the last decade, truly, they just really haven't had an edge rusher. They've had a couple linebackers who've stepped up and become the pass rusher, but they really haven't. Had anybody. But when I looked at this roster and their turnover, I think the D line largely remains the same interior wise. Like the two interior guys, they had good guys there. They got good guys in. this is I really don't think the interior line is an improvement or a backslide. I think they're just going to be the same.
They're
going to be
solid.
solid. They're going to be fine. The outside positions are like undoubtedly a major step up.
Night and day.
Night and day.
It is night and day.
Jordan Dominic is a certified stud, although he may be slated as an outside linebacker depending on the defensive scheme.
He's going to be rushing the passer.
Yeah. And that's what he's good at. So that's going to be great for them. It's a significant step up. And like you said, this is probably the most improved slot that they had. It's either this or maybe quarterback.
Yep.
But this is the most improved slot, and they've got a couple guys in that linebacking room who are going to be in the D line room who are going to be pretty good on the other side of Jordan Dominic. So, and I mean every single person in that room now is going to be night and day compared to what they had last year.
Yep. According to our lads, it looks like we're going to be running a 4-2-5 defense, which is interesting. Because they have the nickel as a basic a starter.
I wonder
if
they're going to go with a rover like Utah does. I don't know. I'm excited.
It'll be interesting.
Although it is Deion, so
it's not surprising. It is not surprising that Deion's like, we're putting all of the defensive backs out on the field.
I would put as many corners on the field as I can.
It wouldn't surprise me if the linebackers they have are like 6'2", 180 pounds, basically linebackers by position,
they're
but
just
they're
pass coverage guys.
de facto secondary guys.
People just run the ball on Colorado like it's going out of style. Colorado shuts down quarterbacks, but they
give up 1,000 rushing yards.
Teams rush for 500 yards a game against them. It's pretty crazy.
That won't happen because they do have some good linebackers, but it looks like the base defense is likely to be a 4-2-5.
Okay, interesting. Speaking of linebackers, I think this is still a position of need. Not as desperate as offensive line. Still a position of need. They got Demoy Kennedy, who is a transfer from Alabama. What I saw in him, he didn't really see much playing time outside of special teams and was like really severely hurt in 2022. He's got a lot of talent. I mean, I think he was a high 4-star coming out of high school.
He was, yep.
And so it really depends on how ready he is to play after his pretty bad injury. I think it was ACL. I can't remember, but
all indications are he's good.
If he's good to go, that's nice for them. Everyone else in this room is like pretty unimpressive. For reference, the other transfers they got, there was a Clemson recruit who was 6th on the depth chart in Clemson, and from Florida State they got a converted 5th string defensive back. And pretty much any recruit they got is going to be redshirted. The depth here is really minimal. And so I think this is going to be the biggest liability on defense by a pretty wide margin.
Luckily, only 2 of them are going to be on the field.
2 of them are going to be on the field. Maybe 3. Maybe 3. They got a little road.
One of those edge guys will be a
Patrick
linebacker. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they do have Miles Slusher slated as the starting nickel, and he's 6 foot, 200 pounds. So, I mean, he could hit some dudes.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe he'll be like a line,
rover. Yep. So that moves us on to the secondary. As you would expect, guys that are corners or safeties want to play for Deion Sanders.
Works, huh?
I don't know why that would be.
It's not like he's one of the greatest to play
Maybe the best cornerback of all time. This group is young, extremely talented. Like as many stars as you can have in a secondary, they've got it for a team that was 1-11. You got Travis Hunter starting in the left corner, and then you got Cormani McLean, the number 1 cornerback recruit from this last class, starting on the other side. The raw talent alone on that is an immense upgrade. Now, I don't know how much you remember the 2015 Colorado Buffaloes, but I remember a young Chidobe Awuzie in that secondary getting absolutely lit up multiple times that season because he was just too aggressive to start. And then in 2016, he became one of the best corners in college football.
No, I could see.
That's what I expect out of this
my
group.
my kind of rundown is that this is by far the most talented unit that Colorado has, and it's also no surprise. But I did say they are young and inexperienced at playing at a high level. The addition of Miles Slusher is really nice for them because it does provide a lot more experience. He has played at this level before. But like more than any other group on the field, defensive back is so dependent on experience to grow is through reading and getting burned. Honestly, like getting burned is the best way to learn at cornerback. You can do theory on pass routes all you want, but until they get burned for a touchdown in a real game, they really don't learn it, right? And that's more than any other group, I think, on the field. Is just experience is king for cornerbacks and defensive backs. So I expect, with the talent in this room, I am expecting some mind-boggling plays, both in the good and in the bad. And so there's gonna be like, what are you doing? And there's also gonna be, how are you doing that?
I will say, yes, 100% on the cornerback spot specifically, because Travis isn't used to FBS receivers. So he has the talent to defend them. It's just going to be an adjustment period. Same with Cormani. On the rest of them, Miles Slusher's a senior transfer.
No, he's a great player. Yeah.
He's bringing in a ton of experience. Shiloh Sanders was at South Carolina before his dad went to Jackson State, and he transferred there. So he's an FBS talented safety coming in with, and then Trevor Woods starting at the safety, being probably the anchor to what was a bad defense, but he was a legit safety. Like there are spots in here, and then going through some of the reports from camp and what this unit looks like is like, what I'm reading is, yes, Travis Hunter and Cormani are clearly going to be starters. The guys behind them aren't that far behind them, and they're going to be pushing them all year. So this unit's going to be good by the end of the season, but the growing pains are going to happen.
Like I said, I think there's going to be some over-aggression. There's going to be some missed assignments. And I mean, one thing, like, yes, Miles Slusher and Sanders, again, first name, spacing, Shiloh Sanders, both have a lot of experience. They are both learning a new system now. So there's going to be growing pains here. The talent 100%. Is far from my concern here. It's just going to be learning a system and getting burned a couple times. But they're going to be a formidable pass defense, especially in the next couple of years. They're going to be fucking nasty.
Yeah, I mean, give this team even 1 year. Like we say 2 to 3 years to build. The way that they've done this roster and the coaching staff, give this team a year. Give these guys that are extremely talented a year to learn the system. This team's going to be legit fairly quickly. It's just not going to be right off the bat. So if we're looking at our 2023 overview, the keys to the season are how quick can you gel and how quick can you learn a new system? Like with this much roster turnover, this is groundbreaking stuff that we've never really seen. That being said, there is some benchmark for success with TCU last year and how much roster turnover they had. And even that was like a third of what this roster turnover is. So for Colorado fans to be expecting a TCU-like turnaround is unrealistic. It's just not going to happen. If we're looking at absolute ceiling for this football team based on their thing, if everything breaks right, Shedeur has almost no growing pains. He learns quickly. The coaching staff adapts quickly. Everybody learns, and everything just clicks. We're probably talking 7-5, absolute, and that would be gangbusters, just like mind-blowing success. That is not likely, but like there are arguably 7 games on this schedule that are winnable.
Yeah, so my key to the season is patience. like I said, like while this team is drastically improved, they were so bad last year. I looked at their schedule again. They, outside of 2 or 3 games, they just weren't even in games.
It wasn't
competitive football. So they're drastically improved, but I really don't see the win column drastically changing. They're going to win more than 1 game. Promise they're going to win more than 1 game. But like I agree with you. I think the schedule lends to a ceiling of 6 wins in my opinion. But I'm more close to the 4-win kind of guy. But
if I was to like place a bet today, it's going to be 4 or 5.
I'm really excited to see where this program goes to. They were just so far behind that this is like, yes, they are light years away from where they were. I think they're still behind a lot of rosters here. Not all of them, which is a pretty big step forward. They are not the worst roster in the Pac-12. So that's a huge step forward. I'm really excited to see what Deion can do with this team in 3 years. That's my thing.
I'm excited to see what they can do in 2. I mean, like with the turnover he has and the draw he has, you can get guys out of the transfer portal at any point if you're Deion Sanders. So if they can, it all depends on how this coaching staff does, because if they can identify holes quickly and then identify the guys to fill those holes quickly and get that done, this team can make a turnaround in 2 years. If we're looking at winnable games on this schedule, there's a big question mark with TCU. I'm putting that in as a loss because it's on the road. It's the first game. This team is brand new. I don't see it. Nebraska's going through a lot of the same thing that CU is. That game's winnable in Boulder. Colorado State's a win. Oregon, USC, absolute loss. No hope. Those games are losses. End of discussion. Arizona State's a win. Stanford's a win. That right there is 4 games that are very winnable. Then you got UCLA, who always bungles a game that they should win. But I'm going to pencil that in as a loss. Oregon State is a loss. Arizona is a coin flip to me because that roster is not great, but arguably better, so they should. But it's in Boulder, and Arizona's always not played great in Boulder. They just haven't. So who knows? Kind of a coin flip game, probably a loss. Washington State, I am very low on that team, which we'll talk about next week. I'm going to call that a win. That's 5, and 2 of those with maybes. That's where it's 4 or 5 wins most likely if they really can step on the gas and then catch a team sleeping somehow. You could get to 6 or 7. It's a mountain to climb. You're climbing a 14er and you're trying to do it from sea level.
It's an outside scenario what you're talking about now. The far more likely thing is that they're at 4 or 5 wins.
4. There are 4 games on here that are like they should probably win.
I don't know if you've seen it could be wrong now, but the Colorado win total for the betting line was like 1.5.
That was early.
I think
it's moved up to, I think it's 2.5 or 3 now.
Because I saw it last. I was like, fuck, if I could make a bet. I live in a state where I can't do that, so boo.
Yeah, I think I bet when it was 3, and I bet the over. My number is 4 or 5. That's where I'm landing with this team, which again is a huge improvement. It's going to be fun to watch as a season ticket holder and fan to just see the immense improvement and the energy in Boulder around this team, and then what they can build to quickly in the next 2-3 years. It's going to be a lot of fun.
My thing is going to be 4 wins. However, games are going to be fun. It is not going to be the misery that you had last year. So even though I don't think the needle has moved so much on the win column, like that UCLA game, like that could be a very close game. I think, UCLA is probably going to win that game still. But like, I think that could be a fun game to watch. I think the Arizona game is going to be a blast. Because if you listen
Boulder
to what we said about Arizona, their weakness is their defensive line, and they don't have a very good defensive lineman. And if that's a good thing for a bad offensive line, So
Yep.
I think that could be a fun game. I think it's going to be very reminiscent of what was that, the 2015 season, where you could see the noticeable improvement. They weren't winning games, but they were competitive. That's where I stand.
I think it's going to be better than 2015, which leads me to believe that next year is going to be better than 2016. So
you're thinking
I'm
I
very
guess
hopeful.
Big 12 championship in 2 years then?
Yes. Big 12 championship next year.
Wow. That's impressive.
Just to
Calling
chime
it
in
right
really
now.
quick on
Yep.
BetMGM, hashtag not an ad. The over/under for regular season wins for Colorado is set at 3.5.
Oh, so that's raised up a bunch. Yeah.
That's
Over's
probably the
going,
number.
yeah,
That's
over's
probably the
going
number.
at plus 120, under's minus 145. So it's right there.
4 or 5's probably the number. Again, there's enough talent on this roster that if stuff goes right, it has the potential to be very good. Now, you're not beating Oregon and USC, especially since those two are your first two Pac-12 games. Like, the schedule just kind of fucked them. But it also kind of like get those out of
Yeah.
the way, and they can be massive learning experiences if you coach it
See
right.
Oregon,
So,
Georgia last year.
yeah. So I'm tempering my expectations a little. I'm obviously going to be more optimistic because I'm a fan. The talent on this roster's there. It just isn't, except for the O-line. And it's just a matter of how it's used and how they gel.
Cool.
But we'll see. It's going to be fun to watch. No matter what happens, it's going to be a show, and it's going to be exciting. All right. That's Colorado. Let's quickly get over to Utah because I know we're running late here. It's what are we at?
We're
Like
running
2
up on
hours
2
right now.
hours, so.
That's not too bad. And Utah, we don't have a lot. Like, I'm going to go through the recap of 2022 and then surprise, like, just there's not going to be a whole lot of turnover because there's just not on this roster. So if we're looking at this team from 2022, they finished tied for second in the Pac-12, but they did win the Pac-12 championship game. They were 10-4, 7-2 in conference. Just a really, really solid football team, which
Very
they've been
Kyle
for the better
Whittingham team.
the last half. It's been the last half decade. Once they got up to speed in the Pac-12, they haven't really let off.
And they're well coached. They're very disciplined. Just a solid team. They're not going to blow your pants off with talent. They're not going to blow your pants off with speed. They're just good. Like
They may get the ball down to the 1 yard line and drop it and let it go back for a touchdown.
Yeah,
also.
they could do that.
They could do that and absolutely let a team back in a football
Love
game
you,
that
Joe
should
Walker.
have not been
Love
in
you
that.
forever. Way to be heads up, bud. That completely changed the course of that season.
As the only reason they made it to the playoff. 100%. They're about to be dead in the water. Thank you, Utah. Best wins last year were the two against USC by far. That game in Salt Lake was epic.
I saw something that was talking about like why Oregon fans and Utah fans have this weird love affair for each other, because like I have a lot of respect and I do have a love affair with Utah fans. I think they're great. And the first comment was like, well, that's because each has fucked up each other's season and both have gifted each other great seasons. So it's just like,
100%. 100%. That is accurate.
Just gifted a season.
Worst losses were UCLA and Florida. The UCLA loss just blows my mind how they played that poorly.
The Florida loss you kind of get because it was early season, but that Florida team was not
and
good.
it was in the swamp. It was in the swamp.
And it was Anthony.
It's hard
Anthony
to travel
Richardson.
that far.
So he always was dangerous, but
but they had that game in the bag and they totally blew it. So that was probably the worst loss. They just didn't show up to UCLA, which is very un-Kyle Whittingham, but that's how it happened. If we're looking at how the team was, this is a defensive powerhouse, which you'll see here. On offense, they ranked fifth in scoring, fourth in total yards per game, fifth in passing yards per game, second in rushing yards per game, fourth in third down percentage, third in red zone touchdown percentage. Solidly in the top half of the conference in every category, but not blowing anybody out in anything.
Kyle Whittingham.
It's a Utah solid offense.
Yep.
Yeah. On defense, however, second in the Pac-12 in points per game, second in yards allowed, second in pass yards allowed, second in rush yards allowed, tied for third in interceptions, tied for first in fumble recoveries, first in sacks, first in defensive
Such a
touchdowns.
good defense.
That was a absolute unit. Absolute
Very
unit.
good.
It was the most well-rounded team that we've covered thus far, right? Well, like we've had basically, this is our 8th team that we're now covering. We have had 6. We've had 4 bad, 1 okay in UCLA, and 2 good. The other good team or great team was USC, but that defense was dog shit, which we talked about. This is the most well-rounded team in the conference, which is why they won.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, USC had like the best offense in the country. It's not going to be that close, I don't think.
By far.
The best offense in the country, and they had a horrible defense. They did improve on their defense. So it's a much more they're much more well-rounded this year. But last year they were awful on defense.
And that's why they lost the Pac-12 championship game and lost to Tulane in the bowl game. So,
they also had a Tulane game. Fucked it up.
This is just how Kyle Whittingham does things. He's a solid coach, does a lot with a little.
Not flashy at all. Just there to work.
Not flashy at all. And they're fundamentally sound. They have very few games like that UCLA game where they just don't show up. Just solid football team from top to bottom.
Whittingham's been there for 19 years. He's going into his 19th.
Heading into his 19th season. Insanity.
Good for him.
In this era of college football, that doesn't fucking happen. Been there longer than Nick Saban's been at Alabama.
Yeah.
Crazy. That is crazy town. Key departing players. You have a couple. Tavion Thomas, running back, is going to jail. So a couple domestic violence charges, felonies that he's going to jail for. So he's no longer on the team. And then Dalton Kincaid is their first-round draft pick, tight end. So that's a pretty key departure.
He is so fucking good.
Unreal. He's unreal. Unreal. Defense, they're missing Gabe Reed, defensive end. He led the team with 10 sacks last year. Solid guy. He didn't light it up, but he found his groove with the defense and led the team in sacks. And then Clark Phillips III is probably their biggest actual departure because it leaves the biggest hole on the team.
He
is a cornerback.
Unquestionably the biggest departure in my mind. He was the top.
Well, Dalton Kincaid was the best player because he's first-round draft pick. But Clark Phillips III leaves the bigger hole on the roster because of what he meant to that defense. He's a 4th-round draft pick by the Falcons.
Which was a steal for the Falcons.
It was a steal for the Falcons, but he's legitimately probably the biggest guy they'll miss next year. So as we're going into the preview, we're going to do a similar thing that we did with Colorado. We're just going to go position group by position group. But if we're looking at their recruiting class, 23rd overall class, 4th in the Pac-12 for Utah, that's good. They're starting to like I said, Kyle Whittingham did a lot with a little. The little's starting to get bigger. Yep. High school recruiting class is 21st overall and 3rd in the Pac again. They're just showing that they're becoming a relevant football program in the recruiting realm. Transfers, 45th overall, 7th in the Pac. So they didn't have a lot of positions of need, so that's not a big surprise.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, the recruiting class, however, it is good. Just they're not a lot of impact for this season because they're returning almost everybody. It's crazy.
It's insane the number of people that are returning. 2023 season preview by position. Let's start with the O-line again.
All right. Utah's O-line has been one of the better O-lines in the Pac-12 for the last decade, and they will continue to be that. They did lose a couple starters, but their offensive line coach, and I keep forgetting his name, is an absolute fucking genius. This man unbelievable what he's able to do. He's a mad scientist. He just like moves guys around, and somehow the guys get better when he moves them to a position they've never played. He's unbelievable. So they've done that again. They've moved a couple guys around from their starting line and their good rotational players last year, and they nabbed up some pretty good recruits who will probably end up in the rotation this year. They're not going to be like solid starters or anything. They'll probably end up, they're going to be the 7th, 8th lineman coming out, just giving some guys some breathers. But this is Utah's least position of need in my mind. This is the best unit for Utah because their offensive line coach is just an unbelievable maniac.
Yep, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. It's going to be a top-tier Pac-12 O-line.
They'll probably be the best O-line in the Pac-12.
Probably true. So not a whole lot there to add from me. Quarterback position, Cam Rising returns. I like Cam Rising as a Utah quarterback. I'm not very high on Cam Rising. Like, he's not going to be a supreme NFL talent. He's not going to light you up with his arm. He is a solid game-managing quarterback, which is exactly what Utah needs.
I'm a little higher on Cam Rising than you are. I think he is a high-end game manager. I think he could very well end up in the NFL and playing for a team. I don't think he'll be a starter. But I think he could end up there. He's tough. He can make the throws kind of surprisingly quick. And his mental game is probably what sets him apart in a lot of this. Like I said, high-end game manager in my mind. But like, to go to your point, a high-end game manager who is exactly what Utah needs. He is the perfect fit in Utah's offense. However, the depth behind him is really bad. And that's really something you need to worry about since over the 5-6 years that Cam Rising is going to be the starter now, 5 years, whatever it is,
decade.
Yeah. He's been there almost as long as Kyle Whittingham. But like, his health has been an issue a couple times over his career. And if somebody else has to start in Cam Rising's position, they just don't have one guy who can do it. They have a couple guys who can do some things really, really well. They don't have one guy who can do it. And so if Cam Rising goes down, I think Utah's in a lot of trouble.
Agreed. He's a key to the season, which we'll get to in a minute, but got to keep that guy healthy, which he has a good O-line, but he has struggled with injuries in the past. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Running back room. This room's going to have no problems at all. Not a single one. They are going to be just fine, especially behind that O-line.
I think they're going to be a running back by committee with Bernard and Jackson, and they are both even their depth, they're just fucking stacked in this room.
Yeah, you throw Glover in there too. It's just going to be an absolute unit.
These guys are going to run all over teams.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Look for about 380, 400 plus yards against Colorado.
Yeah.
With their two linebackers.
It's going to be, that's going to be a rough one.
It's that unit.
There's a lot of teams
phenomenal,
that are going to be having a rough time against Utah's run game.
All of them. Every single one.
There's a couple of good defensive
That is the whole offense.
We'll see.
Yeah, you're only so good for so long against that O-line too, though.
That's true. You just got to hope they have a bad game.
Yep. Wide receivers, not a lot here. Not terrible. It's not heavily used, so it's just kind of there.
I said in my notes, I put this is the most neglected position in Utah.
That's definitely
in the whole
true.
state. Like, it's kind of like Lewis's tight end room. They're just not used a lot. Vele, who was the guy last year that Cam Rising would go to out of his receivers, is back, which is nice. But see games like Oregon, Colorado even did it, who really shut down Vele, and when they did, the passing game really sputtered out. However, I don't really think the wide receiver position matters in Utah, because as the next position group comes up, you'll figure out why.
Yeah, they are adding Micah Pittman for those Duck fans out there that are interested. This is a weird move for me for him.
He's a weird guy.
That guy
He's
just
a weird
cannot.
guy.
He just cannot figure out where the hell he wants to play football, I guess. Yeah, it's not a problem. It's not a huge asset. It's just kind of there, the wide receivers. Now, that being said, the tight end position is absolutely stacked.
Unbelievably stacked. Let me tell you something, Jamie. Dalton Kincaid was a first-round draft pick at tight end, and he would have been the backup to Queeth, the current tight end who is returning from injury. He would have been the backup.
Yep.
This guy's going to be a fucking problem, man. If he is anywhere near where he was before his ACL tear, he is going to be a menace. And even like the other, because like like the tight ends in Utah, they go 3 deep a lot of times with like they have 3 tight end sets all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yasmin, who is a pretty clear step down from Queeth, so he'll only be a 2nd-round draft pick. So he'll still be a pretty like prolific receiver for Utah because it's Utah. But you don't have to worry about him as much as this Queeth guy. It's unbelievable talent. It's gonna be a nightmare.
Another first-round draft pick.
Nightmare for any team that has to go against that.
Absolute nightmare, especially with that O-line too.
Jesus
Just like
Christ.
Yeah.
Not excited for.
We're in dink and dunk.
I am not excited for
No,
Oregon to go up against yet another great tight end.
and we're gonna witness it
Yes,
in
we
person,
are.
hopefully with media
Hopefully
passes.
with media passes. Sponsor us.
Let's keep going onto the defense. D-line, a lot of continuity here. I don't have a lot of notes as far as difference because it's just going to kind of be the same.
You may be surprised by this, but I do have notes on the line. I know,
what?
weird, right?
You?
So one thing about Utah's defensive line is that they were very hit and miss, and their strategy was very clear. So they were very, 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 very good on first down. Very good on first down. Anything 2nd down and short, 3rd down and short, 4th down and short, they were pretty atrocious, actually. They were one of the last teams in the Pac-12 when it came to short yardage plays like that. And so, like, and you saw that against teams like Oregon who could get past that first down slump. And like, there's pretty much what the strategy was is crush them on first down and then let the defensive backs who were very good take over for the next 2 or the next 2 or 3 downs, right? And it worked very well for them throughout most of the season. You saw if a team was able to get ahead of the sticks, that's where they would just start rolling, right? And so that was on this defensive line. However, the unit remains pretty much the same as last year. There's really no significant difference here.
Yep.
And so I would expect them to take a step forward in that. They're all going to improve. It's Kyle Whittingham is a hell of a coach. He always has good coaches around him. They're going to be fine. I think they're going to be better than last year.
Yep. Position on the defense, the next 2 position groups, the linebackers and DBs, in my mind, are the 2 positions that are slightly worrisome if you're a Ute fan. The linebacking core lost a lot of depth in the transfer portal. It's the one position that saw some exodus. That being said, it's probably still a fairly okay group. They'll be serviceable. I don't think the linebacking core is the problem, but they're not going to be a solution.
Yeah, so like you, I talked about they lost a lot of depth in their transfer portal, and none of their returning starters are showstoppers. They had Gabe Reed's younger brother, Kayvon Reed, something like that.
Kareem Reed.
Kareem Reed. He was their leading tackler, not their leading sacker, but their leading tackler But by all accounts, coming out of their camps, out of their media over the last couple, like last year with him, he graded out very poorly in pretty much every metric. And so he just kind of got away with stuff. However, they did get a lot of stuff coming back into the room through the transfer portal, and they got some good depth there. I'm sure they'll be able to eke out like a capable linebacking room. They're not going to be anything special, though.
Yep. And then on to the defensive backs. Obviously, we mentioned they lost their elite cornerback in Phillips. This is the weakest group on the whole team, in my mind. If they can't get to the quarterback, they might have some problems on the pass defense.
Yeah, I agree, and I also disagree with you. So they lost Phillips, huge loss, because anytime Phillips was in the game last year, the opposite corner just got shelled by opposing teams, just absolutely burned all game long after that. It was fun to watch if you're not a Utah fan, but if you are a Utah fan, it's probably pretty miserable. Just be like, dear God, can we get another guy? However, they do have a lot of really guys at the really good guys at the rover position. Like they kind of have an embarrassment of wealth there. Like they have 4 guys who could be their starter. I expect them to kind of flex some of those guys into more traditional safety roles, or move them out to corner, or just give their corners a little bit of reprieve. I think they'll end up being decent as a unit. I think it's really hard to cover people every pass play, which they had to do against Clark Phillips on the other side of the field. I think it'll be a more even thing, so they have more room for error, I think, this next year. But I do think it'll be a pretty big step back. They're going to have to coach the hell out of this team to get them really good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one position where I'm like, oh, man, there's a hole here. Yep. So that's probably the weakest position group. If we move on to the keys to the season, Cam Rising. Keep that dude healthy. If he's in the game and can manage that offense, and the defense can be anything close to what they were last year with that secondary developing quickly, they're going to be just fine.
Wholeheartedly agree. That is my key to the season as well, is keep Cam Rising on the field.
Yep. Overall, this should be a very good Pac-12 team.
My issue with the team is that they're largely the same, and that's a very, very good team. A lot of teams got better. I don't really see Utah has gotten a lot better. So I think they're going to be a little bit left behind this year.
Yeah, Utah is still in that top half of the conference, but everybody else caught up.
Yeah.
So they went from being top 2 to maybe top 4, top 5, somewhere in that range. We'll see when we finish the last 4 here. Which brings us to our next thing. We're 2/3 of the way through our Pac-12 previews now. We've got 8 schools down with 4 to go. Just want to do a quick current ranking breakdown and see where we stand with this now that we're most of the way through. That being said, we do have 2 or 3 heavyweights still coming. So I think the best is still kind of yet to come overall in the conference. But where do you have this standing as we sit today?
Okay. So what I have is number 1 that we've done so far, USC. It's not close. Country Mile, USC. Number 2, Utah. Right? And then I think we have another Country Mile before we get to this next tier. And that, as I have at number 3, UCLA, kind of by default. Neither of us are super high on UCLA, but we're also not – you're a lot lower on them than I am. I'm not super low on UCLA, but the rest of the teams are just – they're just not there. So kind of by default, UCLA falls at 3 right now. That number will get lower or higher. That's what I mean. Number 4, I have Arizona. Their defense is going to be pretty bad, but I think their offense is actually going to be pretty decent to good. And then I have Cal. We talked about how we're surprised by them. They've got a lot of upside. I think I think Wilcox is a good coach. You know, I think we'll see good things out of them this year. Then I have Colorado. A lot of unknown. It's really hard to put them above a team that we know more about right now. I would put Cal and Colorado very even because they both relied heavily on transfers. So they're very close together, but I have Cal just eking them out. I just like their roster just a little bit better at this point. And then 7 Arizona State. Then we have another country mile, and then 7 Arizona State, 8 Stanford.
And then another country mile.
I don't know, dude. Arizona State's going to be bad.
But they have a better coach.
True. They do have a better coach.
I believe in Kenny Dillingham. They're going to be bad. Don't get me wrong. Real bad. Stanford is hardly going to field a football team. They're going to be so unbelievably bad. So my order is exactly the same as yours.
Lose to them somehow.
No, they won't. Don't. If that happens, I will quit the podcast. That better not happen. I have the exact same order as you. I am lower on UCLA than you are for sure. That roster to me is just not good. However, I think there's enough returning depth and there's enough continuity that they have more potential to improve than the rest because there's just so much turnover everywhere else, and they have Chip Kelly. To me, Arizona, Cal, and Colorado are basically interchangeable with those rosters and who's coaching and what they could or could not be. There's so much unknown with all three of those. Cal and Colorado both have immense. Colorado's just on another level with transfers, but Cal also has a lot of transfers coming in, a lot of roster turnover. So who knows where all three of those rosters really end up. I could see any one of those teams being on top of any of the others.
Yeah.
So that's where that tier kind of sits. Like you said, UCLA is just kind of de facto above those. But the roster, like if Arizona, Cal, or Colorado beat UCLA, I will not be shocked.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be like shocked. I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. UCLA is just not. UCLA is solidly in the middle tier. Yeah. They're just not that great. And then Arizona State and Stanford are clearly the worst teams in the conference.
Yep. Cool.
Before we get to Washington State, because they may they may take the cake, but we'll see what happens.
That's a pretty low bar that they have to limbo under, man.
I don't think they'll be below Arizona State and Stanford, but we'll see. That's coming up next week.
Next week. Oh yeah, we're doing this.
We got to do it next week because I'm gone the week after, and then we have one more week to do the Oregon schools, and then it's football season.
Yeah, dude.
We are there this fucking time.
Sorry for headphone users.
So that's where we're at with the Pac-12. For anybody still watching, we love you. You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. Eli, I don't even know whose turn it is for a buzzer beater.
That's mine.
Huh?
You'll take it? Mine. So, yeah, I'm going to take it.
Viewer and listener, thank you for tuning in. We love you guys. Those of you interacting with us during the live stream, we freaking love that. It is the coolest thing ever. So please keep doing it. If you're listening to the podcast after the fact, thanks for tuning in. Zeta June, for those listening on the podcast, thank you for letting us use your music as our outro. Cameron, super producer, thanks for giving us our awesome background and bringing us some stats and some info from the chat. Until next time, we got our Washington State preview coming up next week. Until then, Eli, please take us away.
My buzzer beater is not original. It's not something you're going to be surprised to hear. But today of all days, it rings truer in my heart than any other day that I have ever felt this in my heart. So with as much fervor as I can manage, I would like to say, fuck Larry Scott.
forever. Deuces.
Later, gang.